I do love to be able to help women kind of tease out the reality that there are two individuals who have a healing work to do. Sex addiction in and of itself, it's not a marriage problem. It's an individual problem that impacts a marriage. And I think that's super important for all of us to continue to remember, because when we first start this work, oftentimes we move towards healing the marriage. Partners and wives cannot figure out why this is not working. I do not feel better. I do not want to trust him, or I'm trying to trust him, but I'm terrified. And so it's part of the process of understanding that there are really two individuals who have healing to do, and they're very different journeys.
Welcome to the Betrayal, Recovery, Transformation podcast, where we explore the journey from heartbreak to healing and transformation. Here are your hosts, Chris Rocha and Jen Howie.
On today's podcast, we have Lyschel Burket. She is the lead Hopecaster and founder of Hope Redefined Ministries, a faith-based organization supporting women healing from betrayal trauma. Lyschel has a deep passion for helping women rediscover hope and restoration and wholeness. And she does this through coaching, retreats. She has her own podcast. It's called Hope for Wives. We highly recommend it. Go find it. She offers practical tools, biblical encouragement, and a safe community for those navigating the complex road of betrayal recovery. And you can learn more at hoperedefined.org. That is where you can find her, and we'll be sure to put her contact information in the show notes. So, Lyschel, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited to be with you guys.
Lyschel, we'd love to know a little bit more about your story. What brings you to a place where you become a coach and you start a podcast and you are guest on other podcasts? We are going to talk a little bit about what one-sided healing looks like. But before we do that, we'd love to know a little bit more about you. Tell us more about you.
Yeah. Well, like most of us who get into this work, it is part of my own story, my own marital story. And he's now my ex-husband, but my ex-husband's story, his porn addiction came out into our relationship 2 years after getting married. And it has been a long journey of spending, we had a good 5-year run of choosing recovery and doing the things that needed to happen. We started a family. And then we moved into a relapse, which resulted in separation. We sought marriage counseling. We've done all the things that all of us keep trying to figure out. How do we do this right? Mm-hmm. And has most definitely been a part of my own story. But the bigger piece that came out of it was the realization of the lack of community that I had. I was desperate to have safe people around me. I didn't come from a family of origin that really understood the complexities or even just the depth of pain and the betrayal that was happening for me. I didn't grow up in a faith-based family, so there was a lot of like dismissal and guys will be guys kind of narratives. And I was a believer at the time. And so it was just really challenging to figure out, where do I find my people? Where do I find others? And so we had been married, I want to say 12 years, I think. And I felt the Lord starting to prompt me to do some really hard things that I argued with, kicking and screaming, and told him they were terrible ideas, but continued to ask me to go. And so I started a support group at my church. That was my first step. And I didn't realize how much that group was going to also heal me. Mm-hmm. And so it started to create this beautiful community. Shortly thereafter, then the Lord just started putting on my heart about doing this full time. So I decided I was going to go back and become a coach, which was also very unfamiliar and scary. And the Lord just kept throwing open doors. And then after I started the coaching process, it was really clear that it was supposed to become a nonprofit organization. And that I thought was a really terrible idea. I'm not going to lie. I kept saying to the Lord, I don't want to do that. I don't want to lead a ministry. But he had bigger plans. And so we're now almost 7 years old. And it's been an incredible journey. I would never, it's so funny. We were just joking about this last week that when I filed our nonprofit, it asks you how many years you want the nonprofit number for. And it's like 3, 5, and 10. And I checked the 3-year box. I was like, yeah, I mean, this is just like a phase, right? And yet now I can't imagine not being in this space and not being in this community of helping others heal. So that is my story in a very short nutshell. That was a lot of information for 20 years.
And that's the beauty of this type of community is even the nutshell version, there are details that we're all connecting with that haven't even been spoken, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
here we are in this healing environment, the club we never wanted to be a part of, and the one that the three of us at least never want to leave because of what it's brought to our lives. And in that healing process, there's community has been a huge piece of this. And many marriages are in process of this. Some are going to make it, some are not going to make it. But at some point, I think there hasn't been like an official poll that's been put out on this, but many of us at some point in this process feel like the healing is one-sided.
Mm.
And depending on how long that one-sided part of the healing continues, really can determine the outcome, right? So, would you help us define what one-sided healing is or what it looks like so we have a better understanding as to what we're diving into today?
Absolutely. Um, you know, the benefit and the unfortunate piece to this is that when you start to sit with women all the time, you start to pull from their story. So a lot of this is going to be coming from women who've been in support groups with me at the retreat or coaching clients and even my own story. But one-sided healing is sadly, it starts to feel like it's a bit more familiar and common than we like to admit. Um, I think that every woman steps into this journey when they decide they're going to step in and they realize that they need healing for themselves. Which, P.S., I was one of those gals, was like, if he'll just get his stuff together, I don't need to do this. And I do remember going to a support group. It was a general group for women healing from pain, I think is what it was called or something. And I remember just being so frustrated that I had to go do this group. But I didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know how to move past it. I didn't know how to get over it, right? And I would use quotations to say get over it because none of us get over it. We heal through it. So, but one-sided healing, for a simple explanation of what it is, one-sided healing is when there has been a rupture in a relationship and only one person is working toward restitution or repair or healing. And I know that those words can kind of sound a little, involved. Like, what is restitution? What is repair and healing? But it does happen quite often. We step into doing our own work and we're working really hard to do our own work. And then we look across the kitchen table and we're like, what are you doing over there? Are you even reading a book? Like what is happening? And so obviously one-sided healing can be really detrimental in a relationship that they long to have the relationship itself. But I do love to be able to help women kind of tease out the reality that there are two individuals who have a healing work to do. Now, sex addiction in and of itself, it's not a marriage problem. It's an individual problem that impacts a marriage. And I think that's super important for all of us to continue to remember, because when we first start this work, we start oftentimes, not going to say all, but oftentimes we move towards healing the marriage. And partners and wives cannot figure out why this is not working. I do not feel better. I do not want to trust him, or I'm trying to trust him, but I'm terrified. And so it's part of the process of understanding that there are really two individuals who have healing to do, and they're very different journeys. And that's another challenge to this, because what I'm needing as a wife to heal is going to look different than what my husband is needing to heal from trauma in his past. And how do you do that well? And a lot of times we also have situations where they don't choose to heal. A husband will not choose to do recovery. Or he'll I won't do the bad behaviors anymore. I won't look at pornography, but that's about as far as he will take it. And what we we all come to understand after that behavior, really, I like to refer to pornography as a symptom. Pornography use is really a symptom. There is something underneath that is letting us see, oh, the pornography use is what we're doing to cope out, right? It is no different than having an individual who has an eating disorder and you're like, okay, that's a symptom to something else, right? We got to dig a little further. So many times we get individuals who are willing to work on the symptom, but they're not looking to go any deeper than that. And that's oftentimes when you bump into this one-sided healing.
Mm-hmm. Right, because then it's behavior modification, or they're white knuckling and they're acting in versus acting out. We've definitely
Absolutely.
talked about that, and I do love, Jen, when we have friends and guests come on the podcast like Lyschel that are saying what we've said too. It is a symptom of a deeper problem. And in a group I was leading yesterday, we were talking about that deeper problem, that why underneath the behavior has to be addressed and has to be healed, or it's going to be a repeating cycle, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure you found that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when D-Day happens and we find out the truth of the reality we're actually living in, I see wives over and over again, almost lit on fire. They're running with intensity to resources to put the fire out. They're looking for podcasts. They're looking for therapists. They're looking for community. They're looking for books and resources to help stabilize them. And the struggling spouse or the addict seems to take so long,
Mm-hmm.
if at all. And I've wondered about the psychology of that. Is it that they're so used to this reality they've lived in for oftentimes decades, whereas other people are unaware? Or is it the toxic shame? What is it? Maybe it's a bunch of things. But why do you think, Lyschel, that one-sided healing is so common, especially in relationships marked by betrayal?
Oh, well, why do I think? Well, I think I'm going to say I think because of what I've witnessed. I'll just give that as a precursor, like walking with other women in other marriages and relationships. Like, what is it that has kept them in a place of being one-sided? I wholeheartedly would grab onto the word shame. I think that shame has a lot to do with it. I even see shame hold wives in hostage. They're struggling to step out and say, "I need help," because there is a hope that their partner, their husband, is going to get well and find the resources, and to actually even utter the words that this is a part of our relationship can be humiliating. I do tend to see that more with women who are older, in their 40s and up. I say older, I am in my 40s, but
That hurt a
no.
little.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I do. And I think that you're spot on, Chris, when you talk about women running out to try and find all the solutions. I think it's part of our nature for so many of us. Like, that was the one thing that I really started to take notice of when I started working with women more consistently. Women who are navigating sexual addiction in marriages and relationships are high functioning, smart, intelligent, capable women.
Yeah.
And so that lends itself to us going to find the solutions. It also, I think, as Christian wives, we understand, or we are trying to walk in that persona of being a helpmate and trying to rise up to the situation that we have a problem in this home. And it is my duty and responsibility to help any way I can. And oftentimes that comes from us being the one who finds the books,
Mm-hmm.
finds the groups, calls the CSAT, schedules the appointment, runs all the accountability, has their email on the accountability software emails. And as you all know, that can get really difficult.
Mm-hmm. So bringing it back to your story, based on
Yeah.
what you just said, may I ask, how did you know when it was time to move on and just pursue your healing because the marriage wasn't working?
Yeah. I don't know that I knew exactly. I mean, I've had multiple moments or milestones in my story of when I knew that it was time for me to continue to release my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that came through prayer. and the Lord revealing and showing to me that truly I had started to create an idol out of him. I became addicted to the addiction. Everything about me, I was functioning around, how do we get over this? What do we need to do? What's the next thing? And notice I said, what do we need to do? But I wasn't the one going, I didn't have the advantage of going to a support group early on, right? Our story came out in 2006. So there were support groups for wives back then, but I was all about like, what group is going to be the next thing for him? How can I support him in being there? Sure. Of course you can go to 3 groups in a week. I'll be home with the kids every night after, like I was doing what I could to make that available and easy for him to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I mentioned that I'm divorced now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've come to understand and realize is that the truth is that my divorce is the reality, but it is also the outcome of me healing.
Ooh.
I did not come into our marriage emotionally healthy. And I see that now. And I was on my own growth journey. And it wasn't even specifically early on. It wasn't about my husband. It was about other important relationships in my life. But over the course of time, me coming into the knowledge and understanding that I am worthy of love, me coming into the understanding that accountability is also loving, boundaries are also loving, and wanting to live that as our baseline is what started, I think, to disassemble the relationship that we had. I don't know if there's another way to put that, but when I said, hey, we've got these shared values and this is how I hope we will live them out moving forward. And though that did not align anymore for him, but I continued to hold my boundary and I didn't go back into my old behaviors. It started to disintegrate.
Yeah.
And so, but that is how I would say it's been a consistent invitation. I want to just add this in there because I know that the reason that I wanted to overdo all those things that I did as a caring person and a wife
Mm-hmm.
was rooted in fear. So it hurts my heart when I hear women talk about that they were the porn police. And I'm like, actually, you weren't the porn police. I mean, you probably were. Your behaviors were policing. But the underneath that, the truth is that you were functioning out of fear because you did not have any safety in that relationship. And so in order for you to find safety, you had to take matters into your own hands. And if you don't have someone who's giving you that story, you will write the story yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that obviously can be very detrimental. But so I just want to validate any woman who's like, yeah, I've been all those things. And I'm like, me too. But for us to be able to understand what is it that drives us to those behaviors and then learning what it looks like to start holding to a boundary and saying, no, this is appropriate. It's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I love that
So-
you said that divorce was an outcome of your healing. I feel like we could have a whole podcast just on that. And I'm thinking of a few ladies that I know who are struggling in the earlier days of discovery and trying to figure out what do I do? How do I know? There's not even a fork in the road. It's just a big blur for them. So I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of women who are going to hear that from you, and that's going to bring them some more clarity. That was so powerful.
Thank you for that as well. I'm thinking about so many of us that go back and forth in that process, and there's so much permission in that to let your outcome be your outcome, let my outcome be mine, let Chris's be hers. There's just room for all the outcomes to be connected to healing. If and this is where the surrendering to this process comes in, where it's a surrendering, detaching from the outcome and surrendering to what healing is for each of us individually. This is where that comes in. And part of that is really determining, okay, how much is one-sided healing hurting me? And how can I move this? How can I turn this around for myself? Maybe not for the marriage, but for myself. What do you think are some of the hardest parts of healing when the other person just isn't doing their work? I think that there's some really obvious answers to this question, but in your opinion, what do you think are some of the hardest parts when this is taking place?
The hardest part to healing in this particular life is hoping that the people that are surrounding you are really proud of you for your healing, but then coming to the realization that you're healing from their choices and actions and behaviors. So let me give you more language around that. We've been recording some different things around boundaries, and it just brought back this memory. So I'm going to share it. When I first started learning how to do boundaries, okay, here's the reality. I had read the Townsend and Cloud book 3 times. I had done 2 small groups to learn how to do boundaries, right? Because I was like, oh yeah, I'm buying into everything they've got in this book, right? I had no idea how I was going to do it. I had the words on paper. I knew what I wanted. Where it got hard was that the people I needed to set boundaries with were my nuclear family. And guess who doesn't like boundaries? Typically the people you set them with.
Right.
And so I am like doing this really big grown-up thing and saying no and wanting to set a boundary around something that was important to me. And I'm immediately getting backlash and anger and frustration. I mean, I joke, but it's true. My mother was so angry with me with the decision I made around Christmas and visiting in 2009. And so I will again publicly apologize if you had a terrible 2009 Christmas. It's because I ruined Christmas in 2009.
I am so glad we can finally talk about this.
I've been
I had a
wondering
bone
who
to
was
pick.
I
responsible
know
for that for so long now. I feel so much relief understanding. The dots are connecting.
Exactly. But that was my reality, was like, here I am trying to do these really important things for me and establish a boundary and say, no, I'm not going to do that with the very people that I love. And I'm hoping that would be respected, and they're not. Right. And that is one of the most challenging pieces to doing this kind of healing work. The other piece to it is hoping and asking for accountability, asking another person to own what they've done. Well, if you're surrounded by people who do not take accountability for anything, and it's crazy to sit back and look at this even from a generational aspect, right? Like, as I started looking at the concept of accountability, and I love reading and listening to a lot of Brene Brown stuff because I feel like she unpacks a lot of these concepts really, really well. But what I was looking at was she was talking about vulnerability and accountability and this and that. And the phrase that really surfaced for me was recognizing how poor of a job my family of origin did with accountability. And it looked like, oh, that's grandpa, and it's just the way he is. And being like, wait, he just like completely humiliated the whole family in a restaurant. What do you mean that's just the way he is? And so family of origins are consistently dismissing versus asking someone to be accountable for their actions and choices. And we carry that right into most of our relationships. But the ones who are really close to us and matter, like, accountability is essential. It's critical for us to own our stuff. We ask that of our kids all the time. I don't know how it falls apart when we get into adult relationships, but it does.
I think it falls apart because many of us believe that accountability means admitting something and then acknowledging that we need to change. But that's not accountability. Accountability it really comes from the biblical concept of repentance, which is to turn from your way and run the other direction. And it also doesn't come from outside. It comes from internally, this piece where I am going to make the changes to be accountable for my actions. I'm not going to make Chris hold me accountable for this. Well, Chris has permission to speak into my life and ask me questions. But ultimately, accountability for my actions come from the decisions I make to heal from the result of the actions that I've made. I think many of us in the beginning of our journey think that some of these accountability apps are going to make big changes. They're simply deterrence. But ultimately, if we don't change what is driving the behavior, like we talked about earlier, then where's the accountability really? How long lasting is that going to be? We'll have to continually have external behavior modifications to continue, but it doesn't bring any type of long lasting healing. There has to be conviction with accountability. Yeah.
And I would say conviction and even humility.
Yes.
I see humility as an absence. Like I've seen people say, yeah, I did it, but there's not a level of humility and then also a wanting to make it right or improve on it.
Yeah. I'm always
and own
amazed
what they
because,
did.
I think a lot about my story with Dan. I think Dan had a lot of humility, and I think he really did want to change. And so there's a lot of women who have husbands that simply did not want to change. There's such a vast variety of men out there that have this issue and the things that come with it. There are the men who don't want to change. There are the men who sincerely do want to change, but they don't. So for anyone that's listening, please understand that it doesn't necessarily look one way or the other. There isn't someone who is struggling with unwanted sexual behavior. They're not one type of person. They're all of the relationships that the three of us have been in, right? So just know that it may look one way to me and one way to you, and someone can sincerely want to change, but they have to do the work. And they have to keep doing the work, and then they have to keep doing the work and never stop pursuing healing. It just doesn't stop.
Lyschel, you mentioned earlier on, you talked about hypervigilance or policing and our need for safeties, where that's coming from, most likely coming from fear. Absolutely. Boy, can I relate with that. Now, this is such a black and white question, so I don't know if you're going to have a crisp answer for us, but where's the line between carrying your own healing and carrying someone else's responsibility? That's again such a black and white question, and I'm thinking back in the early days of right after D-Day for me, even that first year. It's normal, like you said, especially for a wife and even a Christian wife or a faith-based wife, to want to nurture, to support, to gather resources and do all those things. And to an extent, it's okay to do that, to inform and research and all of that. But he's the one that needs to make the phone call. He's the one that needs to join the group and pay for it. He's the one that needs to maybe get STD testing or what. Like, we can't do those things for them. I know wives do that sometimes, though. They'll sign him up for the group and pay and say, all right, every Monday for the next 10 months, you're here. And then he doesn't go. So anyway, again, where is the line between carrying your own healing and carrying someone else's responsibility? And boy, I'll just add to that I wish we had a matrix pill, like take this pill and all of this stuff is going to be downloaded into you. I wish we could download into women and betrayed men who are listening to this, the importance of pursuing your own healing, what that does in the dynamic of your own heart and mind and in the relationships that you have, not just your marriage, but children, friends, family. You mentioned that.
Okay, I have lots of different answers that could come into this, but at our retreat, I'm just going to pull this tool out and do my best to explain it. At our retreat, I draw a triangle on our dry erase board, and I write at the two bottom corners, me and him, and at the top of the triangle is God. And I get all excited because many of us probably saw that beautiful triangle in our premarital counseling.
Yep.
Right. And I'm like, yay, we got the answer right. We know what it's supposed to look like. But when you start to introduce something like betrayal in a relationship, and what I saw happening for myself and I see for women so often is that I abandoned my side of the triangle and I crawled over to his side of the triangle. And I sat between him and God. And I was going to manage all the things. And so let me even give you an example of management. As my husband started doing his work, he started discovering his triggers, and he came home one night after group and he starts to inform me of his triggers. And I'm like, all right, let's get it. Right. I'm like sitting down. I'm ready. Give me all the information. And he says that his trigger is stress. Well, I, as a young bride, took that on as a personal assignment that he would never experience stress again.
Mm.
Now, why would that be a good assignment for me to have?
Because you're a super good Christian helper.
I am a super good Christian helper. And in the recesses of my mind, I put the equation together that if you don't get stressed, then you don't look at porn, and then you won't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I won't be in pain. Right. So I felt like I was getting to the bottom of all of this. Well, so what did that look like? In my story, it looked like I started managing our money. I started managing our social calendar. I also worked full time. So I was also contributing to our household. I managed anything I could possibly to make sure that there wasn't any excess stress on him. And then you know what he did? He went to work, and those dumb people at his office stressed him out.
They undid everything. How rude.
Everything, right? So then all of a sudden, guess what I notice about myself? I hate his work. I hate everybody he works with. Blah, blah, blah. Like, you just fill in the blank. Anything that was diverting the plan, right, or interrupting this plan of no stress was creating such havoc for me. Notice that I'm not walking around telling people that I'm doing this because I want Garen to avoid stress because he has a porn addiction. Instead, I appear as if I am a crazy type A, always in control. And by the way, when it doesn't go that way, I get really bent out of shape. Like, I presented very different. And it was so sad. Like, looking back on that now, I'm like, golly, the reputation that I probably carried is so far from who I really am. But I was trying to create safety for myself.
Yeah.
I also didn't necessarily have a partner who came home and was like, I got this. We're going to do all the things, and I'm going to handles and da, 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 right? I had someone who was like, yeah, I mean, I think I should. I'm going to go. But then, we would run into these moments where he would have seasons where everybody in the group was dumb and nobody cares if he's there anyway. And so he's not going to go. And I would begin to panic. Now, you have to go. That's where the answers are. Right. And then I find a book and I bring the book home and I'm like, there's a book. You should read the book. He never read the book. Right. They're not reading the books, all the things. So that all of that is creating an additional sense of fear and panic for me.
Okay, and how stressed out and burned out were you? Trying not to stress out him.
Right. Yeah. And can I tell you, I mean, I hate to, I feel like we have to start connecting these dots for ourselves. But in that season, I was infertile. And I was diagnosed with PCOS.
No doubt.
Right? So my body was telling me that things were not right. Now, when I would go to the doctor, they would say, well, if you could change your diet a little bit and do this and that. Okay, so I'm changing the diet. I'm not losing weight. I don't understand. Like, my whole world is not making sense. But it was because I didn't have a trauma-informed lens to look at myself. And now I do, and I can look back and go, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm not specifically, please hear me. I don't have concrete evidence to blame my husband's porn addiction on my infertility. I understand that our bodies have lots of things that they're navigating, but there was just a lot of dots on this timeline that started to make sense. So going back to your question, Chris, I know I didn't answer it in a very succinct way. I had this very distinct moment. I'm going to just give you this example about the line between carrying your own healing and carrying someone else's. I now have 5 children. So praise the Lord. And also pray for me. When it started. I remember one day, my oldest daughter at the time, she was probably 4 or 5 years old. And every family has the informant, right? She was the informant. Anything and everything someone was doing wrong, she was reporting it in, and I was to seek justice at all costs, right? So we're driving down the highway one day and she's telling me that somebody in the back seat is doing something wrong. And I said to her, Blair, who are you in charge of? And she, in her quiet little voice, goes, me. And I said, that's right. And how are you doing with me? Not so good. And I said, well, let's focus on me, right? And it was this parenting moment that the Lord literally like flipped on my head and said, and how about you, Lyschel? Who
Mm.
are you in charge of?
Mm.
And I was like, oh, because I could then zoom out and I saw all these places, all these ways that I was being responsible and in charge of another person. But let me add this to it too. I know that this is kind of a long answer to this question. I ask women this often. I get to do a lot of therapeutic disclosure support. I prepare women all the time for their disclosures as a disclosure guide. And, they'll ask me, well, should I call and set up his appointments? Should I set up this? Should I set up that? And my open-ended question is what would it mean to you if he set it up? And she's like, oh my gosh, I mean, that would be radical. That I don't even know if he knows how to do that. And I'm like, okay, for reals, he knows how to do that, right? He knows how to set things up. But I started asking them like, how does that change for you? When your husband comes in and he's like, I went to group, in the back of your mind, if you set up group, you're like, yeah, no, I set the whole thing up for you. Like he doesn't get brownie points for doing something that you carried him for. He's going to get way more of an investment and a deposit into that bucket of restoration with us or with her when he starts owning his stuff.
Yes. And does the work himself.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can't tell you the times that I have sat with women and the husband is going to go on a business trip. The guy who goes to her ahead of time and says, hey, I know I'm headed out of town this weekend. I've already thought about my plan, and this is what I'm planning to do while I'm out of town to create safety for myself because I don't want to get myself in a predicament. So these are the measures I'm taking. The sheer fact that he took the time to think about what he needed for himself and then he communicated to his wife
Mm-hmm.
is radically different than a woman who has to go to her husband and say, so you're leaving town for 2 weeks. What's the plan?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Oh, 100%.
So there's such a benefit in us owning our own stuff and learning how to release him.
Yes. And I will say, I love coaching. I love being coached. I love the whole process. And when I have been in coaching sessions or with a really good therapist who asks really good open-ended questions, and I have that epiphany, the dots connect for me in my brain. And all of a sudden the sky opens up and I'm like, I know what I need to do. Or, oh, that's why that's happening right now. That's why that's triggering. It is exponentially more effective in my life.
Yes.
I'm proud of myself. I'm kind of in
Yes.
awe of what just happened. And I will commit to doing what the next step is way more than if someone's giving me advice or telling me things that maybe it doesn't resonate with me. Maybe it's not where I'm at in my growth pattern right now, but they're really passionate about it. It just doesn't work. So when we come to our own conclusions, it's far more effective, far more powerful. And it is scary, scary, scary. For the woman who's listening right now, it is scary. We get it. The three of us get it, to let go of that rope and give full responsibility to our spouses. Because what if? There are so many what ifs. But what I love about your story, Lyschel, is that you are continually telling us that the Lord was in the what if with you. And what if I do this? What if I read that book? What if I talk to that woman? What if I, start a ministry? That's where I want to redirect my what ifs is what if, because then we get the but God.
Yes. Yes.
Comes from that. I was this way. I was lost, fearful, scared, insecure, but God. Because as we pursue him and we pursue that healing, it's a powerful outcome. So we've got to let our husbands have that same experience. And I love your triangle story. I actually wrote the little diagram down on my paper in front of me. And I love it when you said I crawled from that corner of the triangle across to in between God in him. Oh, I'm so good at playing God. I'm so good. And it's really frustrating. I don't know if you two have had this experience, but I have the best ideas and the best advice, and God never takes it. I don't know
Correct.
what the heck.
Yes.
Has he done that with you guys too?
I don't do that.
Oh, you don't tell God how to fix things?
Oh, I was being sarcastic.
I know. Yeah. And it turns out his ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And to
Always.
let go of the spouse is scary and brave and courageous. And courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing the thing in the presence, like despite the fear.
Right. And whether you're married or divorced, letting go of your spouse is a big piece of your healing process.
Yep. It's also really scary and hard to let go of the outcome for your own self, to trust God with your well-being, with your future, with your security, with a different future than what you had planned. That's scary and hard too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think all three of us are sitting here saying it's hard. This is the hard work. This is part of the hard work. It's that release that we have to do, but it's so worth it. I think all three of us are pretty happy where we're at right now in our relationship with the Lord. What'd you say, Jen?
I said it depends on the day.
Yeah, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
I would challenge any woman who's really trying to, like, maybe she's heard that triangle thing and it's really convicted her in a way that she's like, yep, that's me. I can own that. I had to ask myself what I was scared of, because that was why I was over there. I was on that side of the triangle because I was scared. I was scared that he wasn't going to do what it was going to take for us to stay in a marriage. I was scared that if I didn't sit over there and play junior Holy Spirit, which is what I affectionately refer to myself as, I was pretty certain he was going to fall off the triangle altogether. So all of my actions were being driven by fear and an attempt to, control my environment. So that way the tragic outcomes would not happen. And when I started to get honest with that and I started talking to the Lord about those fears, it changed. Because then he was like, well, what if, Lyschel, you crawl back onto your side of the triangle and we work on some things? And of course, I'm like what? I mean, I don't have anything to work on right now because we have to focus on him and what is happening over there and him making sure he doesn't fall off the triangle. And it was, again, another moment of the Lord saying, and he is still holding too much space. That is an idol. When that consumes more space than I do, it's an idol, Lyschel. So why don't we start working on our relationship? But here's what I had to understand was that the Lord loved my husband too much to leave him where he was. Jesus loves him too, and he loves me too. And who was I to sit in the middle of that? To where I suddenly was going to create a miracle or speak the right word that was going to open this, give my husband an epiphany. I needed to let the Lord do what only he could do. I could not carry that weight and manage that anymore. But I did it out of a good intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of what I needed to do was I needed to give myself grace. I needed to forgive myself. Like, hey, you were in a role you were not meant to be. This is where you're meant to be. Go over here and invest in this. So I'm sitting on my side of the triangle. And now all of a sudden the work I'm doing over there is learning what grace is. I'm learning what to do with fear. I'm studying scripture that is teaching me about my identity. And I am running hard after Jesus. And it didn't mean that I didn't occasionally do a side eye and look at my husband like, what are you doing over there? And it didn't mean I stopped all accountability and I never asked him about his behaviors. Those were all still happening. But I had responsibility and work to do on my own side of that triangle. So, yeah.
What are some of those practical tools that you used in the midst of that?
Well, I'm a very odd bird. I'm just going to put that out there if y'all haven't picked that up yet. So I did not do a good job with doing things that were hyper disciplined. Please understand, in this season, I was also having a tsunami of babies. right? So I was like breastfeeding, pregnant, or, whatever. And so my capacity was also limited. Like I was learning how to be a mom, then learning to be a mom of 2, 3, 4, 5. And so there was lots of transition in that season. And so I just consistently kept asking the Lord to meet me in each of those seasons. One of the things as a tangible tool was I found the coloring Bible. So the Bibles that you can color in, I think there's a certain Dayspring makes them. You can get them off their website. I get no royalties for this plug. And I fell in love with that because it was something that I could do that was in the moment. I could sit and color a section of scripture, like the little things that are in there. And I had little kids who were sitting at the table coloring with me. And suddenly I realized, look at me, I'm like modeling being in my Bible. Like I didn't even know how to do that with little kids, but suddenly I was. And like, it was so funny. Yesterday, my daughter walked up and she pointed to a Bible that is on my bookshelf. And she was like, oh, it's your coloring Bible. She's 15 now.
Oh, wow.
That was happening when she was 3 and 4 years old, but she knows exactly what that Bible is, like, because they saw me in it and trying to ground myself and look for color and beauty and just exhale with the Lord. And so that was probably a very practical tool. And I think the other one was worship. I mentioned I'm an odd bird. I have a practice of prayer walking my property all the time. I will go outside and I will literally walk around my postage stamp size yard, listening to worship music and claiming the ground for the Lord's work. And so that was another thing that I would do that I could do with little kids in the house, because they could go down for nap or they could play in the backyard with me. And I could just walk laps around the backyard with one earbud in and just worship the Lord. Just keeping it really simple, but intentional. I think that's the part that for all of us is such a powerful word, is being intentional.
It's good.
Yeah. I love the idea of walking your property. I'm going to try to, I'm working on my prayer life right now. And I think that would be such a great practice. Thank you for sharing that. Jen, I'm curious what tools, and we keep talking about, we need to have an episode on tools, but what about you, Jen? What tools did you lean on?
They changed with the season. You know that I'm a big proponent of finding your voice, speaking your voice, and drawing boundaries around that. And again, just to identify, once again, boundaries are not requests that we're making of other people, but simply saying, if you do this, then I will do this. And that, so one of the practical tools that I had was drawing boundaries about what I would do if someone entered my space with a certain behavior. And that was empowering for me, because there's so many things in my life that have just stripped away my power. I mean, in many ways, we're powerless. That's why we rely on a powerful God. Thank you, God, that you are so powerful and you love us and you see us. And but he empowers us through boundaries. So I think that was one. I'm with you. I also walk around my house. I will walk around my house. I've anointed my doors with oil. I have claimed this since we did the Dr. Laura podcast, Chris. I will claim my territory. I will take back my territory that God has given me. And right now that is my home that I've.
Jen's referring to episode 14 with Dr. Laura Sanger. If you want to go back and listen to that powerful episode, it is to date our by far most listened to downloaded episode, because it's one of so incredible.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes where you really kind of take it in pieces and ask the Lord to reveal to you, what do you want me to hear? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to apply? And then the other piece would be, Chris, you know how much I love to sing and how much I love worship music. And for many years, I've been through a season of where I can't sing, like I can't utter the words. And I'm getting irritated. I'm trying to like pull this voice back out of me and worship the Lord and all these things. And at one point during church, I was actually feeling shame because I wasn't singing. I thought, well, if someone looks at me, I'm the mom of a pastor. Oh gosh, Pastor Noah's mom she's not worshiping. What's wrong with her? I was in my head. And then the Lord spoke to me and just said, what if your worship looked a whole lot less external? And I've been sitting in that season right now. That's what's carrying me right now, where my worship has become internal. So you won't actually really see me singing in church. I don't sing around my house the way I used to. And I used to grieve that. And then I realized, oh, I don't have to grieve that. I can be pulled into a deeper or different calling that happens to be deeper with Jesus and how he's ministering to my spirit with worship music. So now I'll put on worship music and use it as a meditation. So those are my tools right now. Do you have
Those are
anything to add, Chris?
so strong. I would say definitely for me, it was being in the Word every day. So the 1 Year Bible was a great tool for me. And I love our pastor recently spoke about that. And he said, hey, if reading the 1 Year Bible, like reading the Bible through in a year is too much, go to the 3-year plan. Read a chapter a day. Instead, you can look for those plans and print those out. So that was huge for me. Getting outside and walking while either listening to a podcast if I was in a good mental space and feeling curious, or if I wasn't in a good mental space, then it was worship. And I would just cry and walk in nature. And that really reset my, is it parasympathetic nervous system, Jen? Am I saying that right? Yeah. So that helped to ground me. And then it was really a mantra: pursue your own healing, pursue your own healing. What can I do to pursue the Lord today? What can I do to pursue me being the best version of myself? And that identity is such a huge, huge thing to me. Not like, as our pastor would say, who is myself, self and me. And no, it's not like that. It is more a curiosity of, I am a creation of the Most High God, the Lord of Heaven's armies. He had purpose for me. He has plans for me. He's equipped me, gifted me, and placed me here for such a time as this. Why? What is it I'm supposed to do with all this? And how am I going to be a round peg in a round hole? Pursuing that curiosity was huge for me, especially because, like you were saying, Lyschel, with family of origin and all that, I came from a family system that was very image oriented, which is opposite of identity, and not great at communication and not great at vulnerability or authenticity. So I had to relearn all those things. And honestly, that was a really cool tunnel for me to go down, a good deep dive to get lost in, which really did then allow me to pursue my own healing and leave my husband's healing to his process with the Lord. So those are a few things. So on that note, Lyschel, what are some lies that women tend to believe in one-sided healing, and how can they replace those lies with truth? You alluded to some lies. I guess it's their cliche terms of boys will be boys, or this is what men do, or well, yeah, sure, maybe he's looking at porn and flirting with his coworker, but he's a great provider, and look at your house and look at your beautiful family. You don't want to wreck that. So what are some of the lies that women tend to believe in one-sided healing? Even lies to the extent of, he's never going to get better, the despair, you're never going to get through this.
Yeah. I was, as you were listing those out, Chris, the ones that popped for me was, what I'm asking for is too much. I'm too much, and asking for this is too much. In other words, he's not capable of it, and it's inappropriate for me to even ask for it. So kind of a both and. I think other lies are, one that you said was that it'll never get better, or he'll never get better. I'm forcing myself not to respond to the lies, by the way. That's the hesitancy at the end of these. Because that is another tool that I've worked on, is identifying the lie and then the truth.
Yeah.
And learning to how do you do this? How do you undo this? Well,
As a divorced woman, the lie that you were before you were divorced was that he'll never get better, but now you're divorced. That could be potentially confusing. What was the truth then for you? Or what was God's truth for you in that lie?
So the truth was that I am worthy of love. That was the truth. And I was not in a relationship that was loving.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to sort that because I felt like love was a feeling. And I wrestled with the fact, that whole idea of that I shouldn't be running on feelings. Um, but the Lord just continued to keep bringing that to the forefront, that I am worthy of love, and
Mm-hmm.
because of who I am in Him. And this was a transformational question. I had a friend ask me, what do you think God thinks about you in this relationship? And I knew the moment she asked that question, immediately what fell in my spirit was grieved,
Mm.
because he saw these two children that he loved so much, and it was not honoring, and it wasn't a loving relationship anymore, and it wasn't right. And so I had to, I could feel that. I felt that in my everything in my spirit, that he was grieved by the lack of love for me, because he loves me so much. And so that was part of the things that would keep me going in making the next hard decision. But also still staying open-handed, like, um, waiting. I gave the Lord my yes. And so if the yes was to go this way, I was going to go. And then if he said, hey, take a 90-degree, I would have taken a 90-degree, and even turned around if that was what he told me to do.
All right, Lyschel, Chris knows this about me. I hate surprises. However, there are surprises that come along in this healing process that are actually good, that I do love about this journey that I have been on. Has there been anything in this process, in your healing journey, that has wonderfully surprised you?
Well, I am quite the opposite. I absolutely love surprises. I don't like bad surprises. I like good surprises. I will put that caveat on it. It's hard for me to pinpoint just one particular surprise in this growth journey, because I recognize that this was part of God's plan from the very beginning. I've been on the growth journey the whole time. The betrayal story was just part of the story,
Mm.
right? But I would say that the surprising growth for myself was probably the learning how to sit in the uncomfortable, getting comfortable in the uncomfortable of holding to my boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And the pleasant surprise that has come out of it, honestly, is watching me change a legacy after me.
Ooh.
I have teen daughters right now, and I'm telling you, they are so much further along in their awareness and self-worth than I ever was at 15, 16 years old. So I think that that has been a beautiful surprise to see them. I don't realize that they're paying, right? When you're in the throes of and the thick of hard things, it's not always clear, and you're not always aware of how much you're modeling something for your kids. But then to turn around and see them uh, make a similar decision, or I've even had where my 16-year-old has called me out on something where maybe I've fallen back into old patterns or behaviors, and that's not familiar to her because she's seen me more in a healthier state. And she's been like, what is going on with you? Why would you ever agree to that? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I do that. And then she's like, that's weird. Well, and she walks away. But I'm like, important. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's right. Like, that isn't who I am anymore. That's old stuff
Mm.
that I'm still trying to do. So those have been beautiful surprises, and definitely not things that, we always get the luxury of seeing.
Mhm.
So
That's one of the most powerful benefits of pursuing our own healing. I was just talking with a lady yesterday about epigenetics and how we can change our neural pathways, and science backs that as we heal, and the body's keeping a different score now, a healthier
mhm.
score, that we can change our DNA. And as we model these things for our children, we are changing their legacy. We're changing our heritage and the legacy that they're going to inherit from us. And they're watching us do it right. And that changes generations. That
Mm-hmm.
changes outcomes. It's the Esther effect of, I'm here for such a time as this, and I'm going to stand up and do this thing. And like Esther, we've got Mordecai's in our lives that are calling us to action. saying, you got to do this, get up and do it.
Mhm.
And when we obey what the Lord's calling us to do, it has effects down the generational lines. And, that not today, Satan with our kids is such a powerful, beautiful thing. And
Mhm.
surprise, it works.
It does. It really does. It's
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah. Final question for you, Lyschel, is there are people listening right now, and they're in the middle of this situation. They're in the middle of one-sided healing, and they don't know what to do. They don't know what next action to take or what actions to stop taking. They probably have a better clue now after listening to this episode. But what is one thing you would want a woman to know who is struggling with one-sided healing?
Um,
And
I
maybe a
would
word of
encourage.
encouragement. Yeah.
I would encourage her to trust the data. And what I mean by that is you already have the data. The data comes from watching an individual's behavior over what they say. And so, but the hardest part is that oftentimes we're collecting really crappy data and we don't like it. I don't want that kind of data. I don't want the data that he's not going to group. I want the data that he just hasn't figured it out yet and he's going to get there eventually, right? Because we're still holding on to that false sense of hope. But I would just have to encourage her to trust the data and look at the data, assess it. What are you seeing versus what is being said? That's a big difference. There's a big change opportunity there as she continues to try and figure out what is the next thing. Because once you have the data, then hopefully it will lead you into making it'll help you make decisions. If you see good data and the data is that he is going to the things and he's got a new person in place and there's lots of optimism on the other side of that. And is it perfect? No, right? We're never going to be perfect, but is there effort? Is there ownership? Are there spots of humility and accountability? That's good data, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with trusting the data because right now you're not going to trust others. You're not going to trust what he says. You potentially don't trust yourself. You're probably struggling to trust God and believe that he's still in charge, even though we just told you all about how awesome he is. But so I would encourage you to go back to the data for now.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to ask a really hard question. And then what? I know that differs for each woman, but if the data is disparaging to her, if it's more grieving, then what?
Well, the then what in reality is you got to go back to the Lord and ask him what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I couldn't, I had really bad data for years and years and years. And I held on to it and I was like, it is what it is. I'll figure out how to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me was avoiding it. I thought, well, maybe if I just give it some space and time, it'll just correct itself. Then there were seasons where I was really, really involved with the data. I wanted the marriage therapy, going to the intensives, the retreats, all these things. Like I'll put forth all this effort.
Yeah.
And in my particular situation, it didn't change the outcome necessarily. But I think that when you say, now what do I do with this data?
Mm-hmm.
You got to take it back to the Lord. No one could have told me to divorce my husband. They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I had a couple friends that were like, you ever thought about? And I was like, yeah, no, that's not my story. Right. And I would just immediately shut it down because it was not, the Lord had not taken me there yet.
Yeah.
But when he did, I knew that it was right. And I had so many other women who had divorced ahead of me that had said, you'll know when it's time. And so I am never going to advocate that is always the solution. But I am a person who is bearing witness to the reality that sometimes it is the outcome in this particular chapter. So
Thank you for that.
That was, such a strong and validating final answer to this podcast episode. This has been powerful. Lyschel, thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom and your experience with all of us. This was a much needed conversation, and this was so rich. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay. Again, listeners, we will leave all the contact information for how to reach Lyschel and get in touch with her ministry in the show notes. So be sure to check those when you have a moment, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for joining us on the Betrayal, Recovery, Transformation podcast. We hope you found today's discussion helpful and empowering. For more information, please be sure to check the show notes. Until next time, be kind to yourself and keep pursuing healing. A ministry supported by Pure Life Alliance.